Welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Allie Privet's here with me. Allie, what's going on?
Well, we don't usually podcast this early.
Yeah, it's an early one.
It is, which is good. Sometimes in the summer we have a little more flexibility with scheduling because you're not teaching full time workday hours. Now your position's kind of shifting.
Right.
But uh yeah, it's a beautiful summer morning and we're out here. This is also a Friday we're recording. So it's like not only is it like an atypical time, atypical day. I just like to, give our listeners a little, we typically record in the late afternoons, evenings, and
Mhm.
we've had like a full day to mull over our thoughts. But I think a morning recording is going to give us like a different perspective because we're just starting our days.
Mhm.
And I feel really fresh in the morning. I don't know about you, Peter, but that's kind of where we are actually at.
Yeah.
Just to kind of set the stage for our listeners, you might get a different Peter and Allie because bright-eyed.
It's true because like in the afternoon, like I'm kind of like, starting to land in the evening. And then this actually when we have our conversations in the afternoon, it's kind of like a re-pump up, but you're right. It's kind of like that. And early in a day, early in a journey kind of transitions over to our guest. We got Mo Shikuna here with us. He was a student of mine, but I was also a student of his. That's the way I always say it. In an entrepreneurship class, we basically got to know each other our senior year mostly, right? Your
Yeah.
senior year. Actually, kind of my senior year too, because I graduated from the school too. So I'm moving on. But can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to these days, and then we'll get into, a little bit more about your journey.
I mean, yeah. Uh, Started entrepreneurship class with you. It went off me and a few other kids. But even before that, I always wanted to start this kind of business. And I feel like you kind of put me on the right track in a way because I had these thoughts and I just didn't know how to solidify everything. And after I met you and got into the entrepreneurship class, we kind of got the ball rolling a lot. But Um, I'm a photographer. Go by Mo's Media on Instagram. Everybody, you should follow me, by the way. But um, I mean, I picked up a camera out of nowhere when I was like 12 years old at my aunt's wedding,
Wow.
and I took some pictures out of nowhere, and I liked them. And I mean, like for 12 years old, it was pretty damn good, unedited. They were pretty good pictures. Seeing, little me picking up a camera heavy as hell. It was like this big. It was fun though. And ever since then, I feel like I kind of fell in love with it. And I never had the opportunity to pick a camera up again until junior year track season. I got injured. I pulled my quad, and then like shortly after, I recovered from that injury. My foot got rolled over by like a huge weight cart,
Hmm.
and I couldn't run and I couldn't jump anymore. So I had to like figure out what I was gonna do. So Mr. Spoor, the track coach, he was like, take some pictures. You can still come to the track meets, you can still interact with your friends, have fun, be in the environment. So I picked up the camera, took some pictures, and I'm not gonna lie, they weren't that good at
They weren't
first,
as good as
but like
12-year-old Mo.
they they weren't as good as uh they might have been, but I don't know. But they weren't as good as I expected them to be. So I worked at it, just like everything else, you got to work at it, get better. So I went from this $500 camera taking pictures, real lousy. And then I finally learned how to edit. And from there, it just went up. I mean, the track pictures compared to my pictures now is like an unbelievable difference.
Hmm.
But if I had never picked that camera up and I never got injured, I probably would not be doing this. I don't know what I'd be doing, but it definitely wouldn't be photography. So
It's interesting how life circumstances can kind of like change your trajectory and you never know like what that's gonna be. You probably didn't anticipate pulling your quad and then getting your foot smashed.
exactly.
I'm curious though, like with with that happening your junior year, and then you took entrepreneurship your senior year, is that a coincidence or had you in part of, because I know high schoolers, they plan their schedules, and some people, have a plan going in and they stick to that plan, and they have all basically their whole coursework kind of set up. Or did something else happen that caused you to want to take entrepreneurship? Because entrepreneurship was not hot when that wasn't even a class when I was in high school. But when I was teaching, our business department numbers got bigger, and I believe they're even bigger now. And so I'm curious on kind of that educational side, was it a coincidence, or had you planned to kind of dive into entrepreneurship?
I mean, I feel like COVID kind of ruined a lot in terms of figuring out your entire schedule and everything. But for the most part, my entire schedule was pretty set. Like I took the classes that I needed to take, and I took culinary and graphic design, and that was it. And I took 4 years of graphic design. And first year kind of sucked because it was online. We didn't have any of the resources or the softwares that we needed. I mean, we can't do so much. We can only do so much on a Chromebook. So no, I really didn't think I was gonna join an entrepreneurship class. But when I started this Mo's Media thing, at first it wasn't even Mo's Media. I was just posting on Instagram on my main account. And I was like, I mean, I might as well get some of this work out there, gain some publicity in case this does go somewhere. And after first semester, um, I think I don't remember what class I had, but it wasn't entrepreneurship and I got it switched. I remember Mr. Campos, the dean, and Mr. Kowalczyk, they helped me like figure it out. But I had some other class that I really didn't want to take, but it was stuck in there. So I got it switched. And me and my friend Fadi that I was talking about earlier with the clothing brand, he joined this class with me and we just went from there.
Yeah, it's interesting because and I'll just let the listeners know, like when I teach entrepreneurship, especially on a basic level, like I do, it's not like an incubator program. There's accelerated things that other schools have. We did not have the incubator program. Hopefully they get it there in 230. But I always say, and Mo, I think you know this, but like there's only about 20% of the students that are just going to take the learnings beyond and just start jumping and running with it. And there was something there. There's a competitor in you, Mo, because you were one of those like 15, 20 percenters. Fadi was also like, let's go. Sometimes you leave some of the curriculum behind, but like, you start making moves and doing that. So, it's interesting. I want to go all the way back to 12-year-old Mo with the camera and then, take a look at that gap in there. That's a pretty big gap. I mean, if you're looking till your junior year, you're like 17, it's a good 5 years or so. Um, you know, what what would you have liked to seen? I mean, I know you had like COVID in there, but to actually kind of connect that gap that would have been something like in your educational path. And then I have a follow-up question to that, but yeah, let's start there. Like, what would you have liked going back now from 12-year-old to all the way through to where you are now? There's a gap in there. Did that help? Did it hurt? What would you have liked to seen different, or maybe nothing?
I mean, I feel like between now and 5 years ago, if I were to pick up a camera much earlier, let's say COVID never happened and I started this much earlier and I quit track and I stopped running and I picked up a camera much earlier, I would have had a better following now. Don't get me wrong, but like I don't think I would have put as much effort as I did because I feel like between senior year and freshman year in college, I had to do something and I couldn't just leave that school without leaving my mark.
Hmm.
So I I don't think I would have done much different. I mean, I wish I would have had a little bit more support, but if I didn't have the difficulties that I had, I don't think I would have tried as hard as I did. So
Got
There's
it.
that.
And that's actually leading to my second question. And thank you for saying that because I think we've all said that. Robert Peppo said to Allie, right? A lot of people, when you come up against something, your back's against the wall, that actually is where you shine. And then now you've kind of figured out how to like self-motivate, I guess, yourself or kind of keep pushing on something without
Mhm.
constant like different things happening that are forcing you into it. That's was my next question is how did you become a competitive person? Because you are a competitive person. You like you just said, I couldn't leave the school without leaving my mark. Obviously you were in track, which is a competitive event, but now you're competing with yourself. You're teaching yourself things. How did that happen?
I mean, I feel like I've always been quite a competitive person. I mean, I went to private school as a kid
Mhm.
from kindergarten up until fifth grade. And every single day, you were challenged with something that you weren't going to be expecting, especially as a kid.
Mm.
So if you weren't like at the top of your game, which is crazy to say because it was elementary school, if you weren't at the top of your game, you were going to get left behind
Mm.
every single time. And I started running track right around the same time. And it's like, oh, you're on the playground, who's the fastest kid kind of thing. And I always wanted to be the fastest kid. I always wanted to be the kid that stood out. Everybody was talking about that. Everybody knew because if you aren't shining somewhere, it's just like, what are you doing? And that's crazy to say for an elementary school kid, but I feel like that's always been my mindset. And probably not to that degree at that age, but now it is, you know.
Okay.
You said that you would get left behind in elementary school. So do you remember that being like the culture of the school when you were in elementary school? And then when you transitioned to a different school in middle school and even high school, did you feel like that was the culture in the general in education, or was it primarily in your elementary school? I haven't personally heard someone describe
Mhm.
their elementary school experience the way you just did. So that I think will be really interesting to people listening to this because I mean, I remember like having competitions on the playground with my friends, of course, the running or who could be the best four square player or, do the most monkey bars, like all that stuff. But it wasn't necessarily like in class. So yeah, can you talk about your experience kind of in each of the three main
Mhm.
stages of your educational journey?
Yeah, no, so okay, so I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and I went to private school in a mostly like Muslim Arab community. And everybody, like the parents, the teachers, everybody would always be at your throat to make sure you were getting stuff done because there was like I don't remember specifically what it was to be honest with you, but there were requirements to be able to like keep going to the school. So,
Mm.
you come into school with your blue vest. It was like a blue and gold vest. You come to school with your blue vest on and your slacks, and you were ready to get stuff done. So
Mm.
it's like if you weren't, then there was always some type of consequence, and it wasn't like anything crazy, but you were expected to be like always working. Um, and then throughout, like after I moved throughout school, uh, I moved from Columbus, Ohio to Houston, Texas in 2016, and I went to middle school, sixth grade, and they told me that they wouldn't send my transcript over, and I don't know why. So they made me take this placement test and basically had me skip sixth grade, and I went to seventh. And then shortly after that, I moved to Conrady in Hickory Hills over here, and they like it was just weird because I was 12 years old in seventh grade, and I don't know if that's the right age to be in seventh grade, but everybody else was older than me, everybody else was bigger than me. I mean, I was a little kid, and it was an odd experience, but it kind of felt in a way the same because you were still being challenged, and I feel like most people get like coddled in elementary school and middle school because that's how it is, but I wasn't. So if you weren't at the top of your game back then and you aren't at the top of your game now and you aren't at the top of your game in high school, then you were never getting anything done. And I was always at the top of my game because that's just how I was growing up. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that journey because yeah, I mean, we talk about that a lot on the podcast about how we are in the system rather than in, working with the person, right? Like, I mean, you're people. I mean, you're human. And it's like, where do you fit in rather than how do we morph the system around you? So kind of going along that. Um, well, I mean, the real quick, question is, I mean, would you have it any other way? Would you have changed something? Do you like, that back against the wall?
I mean, as a kid, I probably did not like it at all, but like I'm happy it happened because I never wanted to be a slacking kid. And I feel like if what I went through didn't happen, then COVID would have hit me harder than it did now.
Mm.
And COVID already did hit me hard, but if I wasn't already challenged as a kid, then I wouldn't have survived COVID at all. So no, I wouldn't have had it no other way.
Got it.
Mm.
So I
We
really want to, yeah, let me follow this up real quick. Because I love, it's funny because I know you, Mo. So it's like we've worked together and everything, and I see you're going for it. Um, I want to ask a question here, and I don't know if this is where you're going to go, Allie, but this is a question we got. Well, we kind of pulled this idea out of Sam, but when you moved from, a very, very intent, I would call it like an intense school, like, your elementary school, and then in Houston, they figured out, oh, wait, this kid's probably a little bit more advanced because he was held accountable A, B, C, first grades or whatever. Um, what do you feel like when you got to Illinois, did you feel held back at all in your education? Like you could have gone way further?
In terms of middle school, I really don't know because I got there halfway through seventh grade
Hmm.
and then I came eighth grade and then COVID happened my eighth grade year.
Okay.
So not much really happened in middle school for me to be able to judge that. But in high school, it was a little bit of the same thing because freshman year was all online, really didn't do anything. My freshman year, I slacked so much. Sophomore year, it was hybrid. So I was in school Tuesday, Thursday, and then the rest was online. So in terms of the circumstances that everybody in high school that graduated 2024 went through, I feel like we were all held back to a degree because I mean, we couldn't change those circumstances whatsoever, and you can only do so much. So,
it, it's literally like the disruption, and it'll be interesting as the podcast goes on, years later, right? That if we can plan to keep having conversations with recent graduates. And so like next year, the primary years for COVID will have been like eighth and ninth grade, right? This year it's ninth and 10th grade. And like to start your high school journey in a pandemic is not normal. So it is hard to like to compare it. Like who knows what would have happened, with
yeah.
this crazy butterfly effect. But now that you're on the other side of it and you've made some moves and now you've graduated, our summer series is and this is definitely me putting you on the spot because I don't know how much Peter like prompted you with this, but it's called the Crushing It and Relentless series. And when we were thinking about who do we want to have on, especially students who just graduated high school, your name came up. And so, from Peter's perspective, you are crushing it. You are being relentless in your pursuits. So, can you tell us, like, what, why, like, do you see yourself that way? And, like, what would you consider your mindset around wherever you're headed next, right? Like, because you have Mo's Media, how would you describe, your outlook for the future, your educational journey, or wherever you're going in life in terms of I'm getting it done, I'm being relentless, I'm turning the dial all the way up for whatever I'm pursuing.
All right, so I'm going to UIC for graphic design, and my minor is going to be entrepreneurship. So I've I never really had the time in high school to excel at my like peak because I only had so much time. But now that I have time to plan what I'm going to do in college, like I have so much things lined up and like ready to do for college. I have to draft this email actually for the athletic director at UIC because I recently noticed that they don't have a photographer for their sports. And something about me is I always like to be talk of the town. And if some kid comes out of nowhere with a camera, starts taking pictures, and everybody's like, who's that kid on the court? Who's that kid on the field? Why is he taking pictures? We've never seen this before. I always want to be like unexpected to people. And now that I have time to plan that out and I can really do that, I'm gonna do it to my like best ability because I have 4 years here. If I don't do something, what am I spending this money for college? What am I doing it for?
Mm.
Yeah, that's now you know. That's why he crushes it. Hey, by the way, Mo, you're crushing it. No,
Thank
but
you.
so but no, for real, like when we were in spring semester, we had a lot of conversations. Mo and Fadi would actually stay after class often, and we would talk a little bit about business a little bit differently than we would in class. And one of the things that you said was in high school, as you were going through, especially your spring semester, time was a factor for you. Like there was so much more you could do. I mean, just to give everybody, I mean, this guy's doing, Nike camps and things like that. Like he's not just going to, still doing the weddings and things like that. Like you are legitimately going to basketball camps, AAU, making connections with, the big sneaker companies, etc. Um, time. And you said more time. Would you have liked, like, let's go. I mean, let me just ask the bigger question here then. So, how would you redesign high school? Maybe let's just start your senior year because you did, we had to deal with COVID. I mean, I came in to Stag the same time you did. We weren't even in school. But like in the years that maybe like your junior and senior year, how would you redesign school for Mo, for the way that you are, for what you would have liked to do? I can see the smile. It's a big question, but
It's a
I'm sure you
big
have idea.
question. Um, okay, like the first thing that comes to my mind is a lot of resources were like put towards I'm not saying they didn't matter, but things that were less important than education and like making sure people graduate. I've only
Mm.
been through high school one time, but I have never seen so many people not graduate or so many people not walk the stage because of the resources that they didn't have or what they weren't provided. And I mean, like, some people didn't do what they should have to graduate, don't get me wrong. But like, I feel like if some people had the help that they needed and resources weren't put in the wrong place, then a lot more people would have graduated this year.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think. I really don't know what to change in high school. I mean,
What would be like your dream high school? Like, what would you have liked, like, especially for your senior year?
I mean, it'd be little things like
Sure.
schedule changes
Hmm.
and like I feel like the way that stuff was aligned, I mean, having lunch at 10 o'clock in the morning wasn't really the most normal thing, but
Mhm.
some things people were just affected by. I mean, some people come to school for 0 hour like me, and cafeterias are closed. How am I supposed to get food?
Mhm.
Um, and then they shoot me in this sixth period lunch, so I'm going through the whole day with no food. I'm hungry. You always saw me, I'd come to class fourth period with a bunch of snacks from the vending machine because I have no food. I'm
Right.
hungry. So it's little things like schedule changes and re making sure people get the correct resources. Like I feel like a lot of the money, I mean, let's be honest, Stag didn't really need to be remodeled this year. A lot of the money could have went towards like mental health stuff, and we only have three what do you call them?
Yeah, the
Um uh,
psychologists or
yeah,
counselors or whatever. Yeah.
we only have three.
Yeah.
Like they have this tiny office, and special shout out to mine. Her name was Miss Lombard.
Hmm.
If I didn't have her, I wouldn't have gone through high school. And I've always been like a huge advocate of mental health.
Hmm.
And I feel like this school, I mean, like now they're finally getting to it. They're finally giving the social workers a bigger office. They're finally getting more of them. But like some of these kids don't even know what that office is. I've brought so many of my friends to that social worker's office and they're like, what is this? I've never been over here before. And a lot of those kids were people that needed it. Like I would not have gone through high school without my social worker. And if they plan on putting resources anywhere, it should be into that because some people really need it.
Yeah.
A lot of people have gone through a lot of shit.
Hmm.
That's just what it is.
No, that's powerful, man.
Mm. The it's in like what's making me think about what your answer in terms of the resource allocation in schools. uh, That's not something we've heard. Like, wow, there's a lot here. Because collectively, everyone went through what is likely the most traumatic disruption of our lives 4 years ago. I mean, I could be wrong. Like, right, the world can surprise us all, but it's likely a global pandemic shutdown is unlikely to happen again, where it affects every single person. So, right, when you're saying the resources weren't allocated correctly, what I'm hearing, and I'm interested in your thoughts, is that like we aren't addressing this thing that happened for 2+ years of our lives, and it had ripple effects in the educational system and the mental health of the students, and all of these things compounded. So like you saying a lot of people didn't graduate, where where they were at mentally, affect did that affect their ability to even graduate? And so from when we say like, well, how would you reimagine schools? Would you say that like you kind of have to look at the landscape, the emotional landscape of youth and make decisions like more in the moment rather than just like they probably had this remodel plan for years, but like they probably weren't planning a global pandemic when they were doing this. So what would you say, like, thinking about, okay, COVID really affected us. What is something that could have really helped coming out of that, that maybe what specifically, is there something that you think would have really helped your class and your age group with mental health besides just the social workers and counselors at the school? Is there anything else you can think of there?
I mean, I personally feel like, I mean, I came to high school. First 2 years were nothing. And then we fully came back junior year. And if it weren't for the masks, I wouldn't have remembered. They tried to make it seem like nothing happened and
Hmm.
that we were supposed to just get back to it. as if nothing happened, as if we didn't have this huge gap coming from eighth grade, being on computers, and then just coming back into the building 3 years later.
Mhm.
And they just expected us to be the same. Like a lot of people, like I'm grateful it wasn't our class, but like a lot of people didn't graduate and didn't get to walk the stage that graduated in 2020 because of COVID, like and 2021. A lot of people didn't get to walk the stage, and they're just gonna have to deal with that for the rest of their lives because it's something that happened. I mean, I was in eighth grade, and people do in eighth grade, they usually have graduations. We walked into the building one by one, dropped our stuff off, took a picture, and grabbed our diplomas, and that was it. And I can't even imagine what that would have been like for college students and high school students that did that for 4 years and then had to come back and just act like it was normal.
Mhm.
So I feel like if they recognize it a little bit more and made it like obvious, like, yeah, this happened to you guys. We're not going to act like it didn't happen to you guys. And we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that everybody is still somewhat on track as much as
Mhm.
you can be.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you're bringing back a lot of emotion, a lot of memory, because I was leaving Glenbard East High School, and then coming into Stagg right in the middle of this whole thing, right? Because it was March 2020, and then went into the spring and or the fall, and then and what's interesting is I can't tell you so much as is enough about like how the focus was getting back to normal, right? It was like,
Mhm.
let's get back to normal. But you bring up a great point, Mo. Like, I don't, I know that we didn't unpack what just happened, right? For us, it was just like, all right, well, it was kind of a different way of teaching and blah, blah, blah. And it was back to normal. And I can tell you, way back, when I was doing the podcast, it was like this is our opportunity to rebuild, right? To actually, but in order to rebuild, you're bringing up a great point of really just unpacking, like, hey, this just happened, this sucked. How do you feel about this? And then um, I feel like it would almost be a if we could go back and rebuild something into the school day, you'd like drop off a period and then have a period of just a whole year of just like, hey, this is our unpacking period. Like, we're gonna talk about this, right? We're gonna like we're not gonna have tests on COVID or anything like that, but we're gonna like talk about this. We're gonna unpack like what happened. How do you feel about this? How do you think it's made you stronger? How do you think it affected you in a negative way? Like outside of you talking to school psychologists and help and things like that, you're right. Nobody got that. Nobody got it. I mean, you could have bottled it up or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and this is interesting because Ali, like, now going back and seeing that, and actually one of the ways that you did crush it though, Mo, is something that you said in there. You were like, I can't tell you how many students I brought into that office, right?
Mhm.
That's killer, dude. That's awesome. And thinking about that, I'm an intern teacher or anything like that. So I mean, how do you see this going forward? What would you like? So in this capacity, like the resources, I know I'm just throwing something out there and you talked about resources, but can you get more specific? Like what would you actually create a class around like, social emotional learning or whatever else they want to tag it to where you're unpacking things? How would you design a place in a school, and let's just stick with like high school and COVID or not, but like to really have a place for students to, let's be honest, everybody's like, oh, you want to feel safe and all this, of course, but a lot, but somebody to talk to. What does that look like for you, man? I'm digging into it because you know, you're a creative guy. I'm just trying to think about it.
I've always been good at finding the problem, not so good at solving it,
Right. Yeah.
but
That's
I've always been good at finding the problem. But I mean, as funny as it does sound, having a class period where everybody just talks about what happened doesn't sound like the worst idea. Whether it's in the pack, in the huge auditorium, in the gym, a pep rally, something like there has to be some kind of way where these kids are able to talk about what happened because COVID might have happened in my eighth grade year, but some of these kids grew up from their first grade till their fourth grade year on computers
hmm
at home, locked inside, not being able to do anything. So some, whether it's a club or a class or some kind of breakout where you can just go and it shouldn't be hidden. That's all I'm saying. Like,
hmm
yeah, you could go talk to these social workers, but like, how are you going to talk to the social workers if you don't even know where the office is at? There's some teachers in this school that don't even know where the social worker office is. Like, that's a
Mhm.
problem. It's a really big problem. And I see now that like mental health and everything is finally becoming a huge topic, but like, why did it have to be a huge pandemic that caused that? Like, there's a lot of crap going on in kids' heads, and they need somebody. If it's not their parents, some people don't have that support. Like, so it just if they made it more obvious and they made more places to go to, like it shouldn't just be one small office. It should be something as big as the pack because how do you expect somebody to get through school if they don't have the right mental to do so?
hmm
Like if you're bottling everything up and you're trying to figure out life for yourself, how do you expect me to focus on school?
Right.
So, yeah, that's my insight.
Well, this has been very, very insightful in terms of, like just the why you even took entrepreneurship, kind of what led you into Mo's Media, and then kind of taking a step back from elementary school to high school. Like you've had a variety of experiences. And like you said, you've only gone through it once, so you it's not like you have something to compare it to, but it is a unique journey with lots of different pivot points. What are you to kind of, before we totally wrap up this conversation, but what are you looking forward to the most now that you're on to a new stage and headed to college and forecasting the 4 years and like what are you most looking forward to educational in your educational journey?
So, give me 1 second to like get it, wrap everything up. Um, I feel like high school was kind of a trial run in a way for me, even though I didn't have all 4 years with what I had. I feel like it was kind of a trial run for me. And taking entrepreneurship and taking all those graphic design classes, I mean, like everybody says, oh, colleges and like high school and whatever, but like I feel like with everything that I've done, now I can go to college and make sure I didn't make the mistakes. And don't get me wrong, I'm still going to make mistakes. I mean, we're humans, we're not perfect, but I at least know that I won't be switching majors or like trying to figure out what I want to do now because I've been on this path for so long that I really don't know anything else. So I can't like if somebody told me to switch majors right now, I don't know what I would switch to. If something happened to the graphic design scene and just disappeared, I'd kind of be shit out of luck. So I'm I'm glad in a way that I started in high school and not in college because some people are going to take the next 2 years to figure out what they want their life to be while I am like in a way ahead of the game because I know what I want to do and I have my plan set. So I feel like just building on my knowledge that I already have right now is my main goal, to make sure that I come out of college with something other than a diploma.
Nice. We often talk about like a restart, right? Like when you get to go into the next level of education and whatnot. And I feel like you have that down. Um, and the experience of actually, just one small coach telling you, hey, why don't you just come on out and take pictures, and you can still have that. Like if you look at back at these moments, even COVID, really, all along the way, Mo, what you have done is not only help yourself, but you've also helped others. I've seen that, and that's just the way that you're for people out there listening, right? Like when you're helping others, you are definitely helping yourself, and I think that's something that you really kind of took under your wing. Like you, as a senior, you didn't pull any punches. You didn't like give excuses to people. You were straight. You're like, hey, you know what? This is here. This is here for you. If you don't want to, I can't like grab you in a headlock and pull you down. Well, I mean, you could, but like, you did that. And I think that's, to me, is crushing it. I mean, it really is. It's really understanding your surroundings. You really started to understand, hey, wait, this is, I don't think, I think why Allie and I are a little bit kind of like, wow, is because the mental maturity that you have about how you have responded and reacted to things in your life. Like I wasn't thinking about that until well into my 20s, man. So to me, I think that's crushing it. And I just wanted to like give you a huge, I don't know, high five there. I don't know what we're doing here, but because I think that's the reason why we wanted you on here, to kind of talk about, your path. Um, so with that being said, that was kind of my final thought there, Allie. How about, do you have anything else?
Um, my final thought is just like you you had like this really great, whether you know it or not, elementary school experience that I think instilled some really like strong core values of like what education and like the purpose for being there. And it's kind of blossomed in different ways, and you didn't let like major life circumstances derail you. And and so I think if anyone listening to this, like, is being challenged in any kind of way, um, you know, find a community like Mo's elementary school community. Because I mean, it's like it sounds like they were all in
Mhm.
on something together, and there is like a lot of power in that. And so I would just schools and school leaders and educators, like this idea of a really strong community with a high buy-in to the educational system, and then not sweeping catastrophic global things under the rug and just going back to normal, I think are the two big key takeaways here for people to kind of hear and go and listen to in Mo's answers. Because in order to crush it, you have to have like buy-in, and you have to be able to address the elephants in the room. You can't sweep them under the rug. So
Right.
that's what I would say.
Are we missing anything, Mo?
No, I think you guys nailed it.
Listen, man, want to thank you, but before we let you go, how can people connect with you and Mo's Media?
Well, if you know what Linktree is, you can go to Linktree/Mo's.media, or you can find me on Instagram, Mo's.media underscore. Um, there's anything with Mo's Media, you'll probably find me. Big white logo,
Yep.
looks just like that.
There it is.
Nice.
I'll put all that in the notes for this episode as well. So if you want to connect, honestly, a very talented photographer now. I love seeing your work. That's one of the best things that I get to do after somebody graduates, and we're not going to be like on a daily basis, but I can still watch and see things going on. All the amazing things that you're doing, man. Keep up the great work. We may have you on in the middle of your UIC experience, and then see how that's unpacking. But thanks so much for being here with us today, Mo.
Thank you guys so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
100%. All right, guys, we're going to keep crushing it. We're rounding out the Crushing It series here. But for Allie Privet, I'm Peter Hostrasser. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next week on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.